Hi there, gorgeous, and a very happy drugstore December to you. If you have not heard, every video coming out this entire month is drugstore themed. I am publishing 5 videos a week. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are drugstore December, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are DUPE December, like the video you're seeing here today. So if you'd like to be notified of new videos in the future, please subscribe, and thank you in advance if you do. Today, I am duping out the Huda New Nude palette. I feel like this is one that I was duping so much this past year, but when I went back and looked, I only had 2 videos where I had tried to dupe this palette with other comparable drugstore palettes. I didn't get exactly close with any of them this past year as much as I thought that I would, but then this one came to my attention and I wanted to compare it, and that is Hard Candy's Blushful Nudes. This palette retails for $10. You can find it in Walmart stores, and that is a tremendous savings when you compare it to the Huda New Nude palette, which retails for $65. So I've done a comparison, side-by-side application on my eyes. I'm also including swatches at the end of the video so you can see how they look side-by-side, and I will let you know. Can you get an exact match for this Huda palette or not? For the comparison between these 2 palettes, I'm going to be applying the Huda palette on this eye and the Hard Candy palette on this eye, beginning with the shades Secret and Love Child. And one of the things I've noticed with this Huda palette in particular, I used it so much this past year for duping and everything else, is that the pigmentation is a little lighter with some of the mattes. Especially when you go to some of these dupe palettes, you do find that the dupes have greater pigmentation. And I also find that the Huda eyeshadows can be a little troublesome to blend. I'm not trying to speak badly about this brand. It's just something that I've noticed across a couple of her palettes. You can probably see what I mean there. It looks kind of splotchy after the initial application. I'm going to blend it out a little bit here. Next, applying the Hard Candy eyeshadow. So it'll be interesting to see how this palette compares, because, I mean, for $65, there shouldn't be any splotchiness, there shouldn't be any unevenness in application. It should apply smoothly. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, yeah. But so far, the Hard Candy eyeshadow is applying real nicely. I'm not having any issues with splotchiness. It's even, and it's applying pretty well too. Now it is a tad bit more orange on the Hard Candy side, just a touch. I mean, if you're going to be picky and you really study these 2 side by side, you can see a slight difference. But once it's on the eyes, it's really hard to tell them apart. Next 2 shades I'm taking from these palettes are Raw and Surrender. This is a reddish brown, deeper brown than the first one we applied. And I'm applying this in the deeper part of the crease to give the eye some definition. And the Hard Candy on this side. Now the 2 colors do match each other pretty closely, so it's hard to tell if there's a true difference. Wow, I mean, up to this point, if I didn't tell you which eye was which, could you guess? I'm really amazed. Next 2 eyeshadows I'm going with are Crave and Flirty Girl. This is one of those shimmery shades from this palette. And normally I would apply this wet onto my lid for a more intense color payoff, but I really want you to see the quality between these 2 palettes. So I'm not applying these shades wet, and instead I'll go in with a dry application. First apply it on the Huda side. Very glittery. Oh goodness. Fallout City on this one. We'll try it with the Hard Candy eyeshadow next. Woo! You can probably see a color difference already between these 2, and I'll be honest with you, I like the Hard Candy eyeshadow a lot better. It's got the gold in it that the Huda eyeshadow has also, but it's got more pink in it, so it's got this gold-pink duochrome quality. that is simply beautiful, and I like it a lot better. To finish the look, I'm going back with the eyeshadows Raw and Surrender again, and I'm going to use that on the outer third of the lid. Blend it back into that gold shade. Same thing on this eye. Gosh, I just feel like the Hard Candy eye is prettier by comparison. I feel like both of these palettes gave me equal amounts of fallout, and if you look under my eyes, you can see what I'm talking about. So it didn't discriminate in terms of being high-end or drugstore in that respect. And I do feel like if I had applied these eyeshadows wet, it would have greatly diminished the amount of fallout I got underneath my eyes. But I'm telling you what, it's, with the exception of this shade on the inner part of the eye, I really feel like this is an excellent, excellent dupe, if not better than the Huda Nude palette. Just like you saw in the tutorial, how those two eyeshadows didn't exactly match up, that is the case with a few of the other glitter eyeshadows between these two palettes. And when you look side by side at the swatches of how they compare, you can see the subtle differences there, especially with those glitter shades. There are a couple matte eyeshadows in the Hard Candy palette where you can tell a slight color variation when you compare it to the Huda palette, but they're so subtle that if I didn't point them out to you and you weren't super focused on them, you really could not tell the difference between these two palettes. Like I said, it really boils down to some of the glitter shades where you'll see the most differences, if there are any, between these two palettes. Now you may have noticed that you get 15 eyeshadows with the Hard Candy palette as opposed to 18 eyeshadows with the Huda New Nude palette. So you are missing 3 eyeshadows, and those are Spanked, Teddy, and then that concealed shade that's down there at the bottom of the palette. I don't really feel like this is such a necessary thing to have in a palette. I mean, it's basically a concealer that you apply on your eyes before you apply your eyeshadow, and I'm pretty sure that you have a concealer that you can do that with already if you wanted to do that. And I don't feel like Spanked and Teddy are that unique of colors that you would miss them from the Hard Candy palette. So if you don't mind missing those 2 eyeshadows, I do feel like this is a really excellent quality dupe for the price. And like I mentioned, you can find the Hard Candy palette in Walmart stores. If you're interested in purchasing it online, I'll also have it listed and linked for you below. But I just have to say again, how blown away I am by the Hard Candy palette, because I've tried so many of their palettes in the past, and you know, if you've seen my reviews on them, I have not been impressed with the eyeshadow at all. I found it to be chalky, dusty, not pigmented, and I honestly was expecting the same results with this palette. I was, but this quality, I don't know if they've changed their formula and they've been listening to customer complaints. It's completely different from anything that I've tried from them in the past. So if you've been disappointed by their eyeshadow palettes previously, give them another try. And I am interested in looking at the other newer palettes that they've come out with, just based on my experience with this one. So let me know your thoughts on it if you've had the opportunity to try it out yourself, or what you thought about it based off of today's video. I want to say thank you again for being here, for taking the time to watch. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for another video in Drugstore December. When you compare these two salads, they're not salads, they're palettes.